Hello students. The poem Fern Hill is prescribed for the students of BA Part 3, English Literature, Paper 1. Dylan Thomas, who wrote this poem, is very much a poet of the 20th century because he was born in 1914 and he died in 1953. Before we look at the poem, let us take a quick look at the biography of Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas is a writer who is best known for the poem Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night and the play Under Milkwood. Synopsis. Welshman Dylan Thomas, meaning he belonged to the Welsh district of England, was a reporter and prominent writer in the early 20th century. His most famous poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, was published in 1952. But his reputation was solidified years earlier. Thomas's prose includes Under Milkwood, 1954, and A Child's Christmas in Wales, 1955. Thomas was in high demand for his animated readings, but debt and heavy drinking took their toll, and he died in New York City while on tour in 1953 at the age of 39. Early years. Dylan Marley Thomas was born on October 27, 1914 in Swansea, Wales. When he was around 16 years old, he began copying his early poems into what would become known as his notebooks, a practice that continued till 1934 and contributed to several of his first collections, beginning with 18 poems published in 1934. In 1931, at the age of 16, Thomas left school to become a junior reporter at the South Wales Daily Post. His position with the Post did not last long though, as he quit in December 1932 and turned his attention away from journalism and back into poetry, now a full-time pursuit. Pursuit means something that you do, something that you follow. Remarkably, about 2/3 of Thomas's ovary is from his late teens. Ovary means collection of works. Any artist, any writer, any singer, the collection of compositions and creations is known as ovary. Thomas soon found success. His poem, And Death Shall Have No Dominion, was published in 1933 in the New English Weekly, marking his international publication. The event sent Thomas to England in the summer of 1933 to meet with editors of various English literary magazines. He moved to London shortly thereafter and stayed for nearly 10 years. Commercial success. The following year, Thomas saw his work appear for the first time in book form. Light Breaks Where No Sun Shines was published as an entry in the year's poetry in the spring of 1934, and his first collection, 18 poems, was published that December. His first published efforts brought Thomas critical praise and honors, including the 1934 Poets' Corner Prize. 18 poems drew heavily from the notebooks of collected poems that Thomas wrote as a youth, and it would set off a string of notebook-inspired works such as 25 Poems, 1936, The Map of Love, 1939, and Deaths of and Entrances, 1946. This period also marked the beginning of the poet's lifelong struggle with alcohol abuse. Thomas's star rose in the literary world, and his path was unique. Unlike other popular poets of his day, he shied away from tackling. He shied away means he avoided facing intellectual and social issues. Not really facing here, the word tackling means dealing with, talking about, writing about. Instead, producing work reminiscent of the Romantic period. Reminiscent means something that reminds you of something, with an emotionally charged lyrical approach. Thomas began doing his tours to bring in income, and his readings were more like flamboyant performances than staid poetic events. Staid means very sober, old fashioned. He toured the United States 4 times, with his last appearance taking place at the City College of New York in October 1953. A few days later, after a long drinking bout, Thomas collapsed. He died in a New York City hospital not long after, on November 9, 1953, at the age of 39. Now let us look at the poem Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas. First, I have given you the text, which you can read at your leisure. Let us come directly to the understanding of the poem itself. The introduction to Fern Hill. Fern Hill was initially published by Thomas in the October of 1945 edition of the Horizon magazine, though he would also publish it in the next year as a part of his volume, Deaths and Entrances. The title of the poem comes from Fern Hill, a house in Carmarthenshire, which was owned by Dylan Thomas's aunt and uncle. Thomas spent much of his childhood at Fern Hill, often living there for holidays and extended visits. If Fern Hill is any indication, the experience had a profoundly positive impact on the adult Dylan Thomas, who seems to look back on those times with great happiness. The summary of the poem. Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas is an autobiographical poem in which Thomas uses the memories of childhood days in order to explore the theme of a journey from innocence to experience. The theme is based on William Blake's division, The World of Experience, and it is reinforced through the use of Wordsworthian double consciousness. The poem can be divided into 2 parts. The first 3 stanzas are related to the poet's experience as a child when he used to spend his summer holidays at his uncle's farm. Fern Hill it is in Vansea in Wales. But the last 3 stanzas are about an awakening in the child, which signifies the loss of the world of innocence. At the center of this loss of innocence are the myths of fall of the first human beings. Myth means a story which has been handed down for centuries from the ancient times to the present. This is the story of Adam and Eve, which I have already related to you in the past. The world of innocence, child, as described in the first 3 stanzas, is like the Garden of Eden. This is a world in which the child is in complete union with the nature. This world of fantasy offers the child an Edenic bliss. Edenic means of the Garden of Eden. Bliss means complete happiness. The way Thomas describes this world, it appears to be a timeless world, without a sense of loss and decay. In the third stanza, the poet slowly moves towards the transition, means the change through movement between the world of innocence and the world of experience. In the fourth stanza, the speaker's sleeping is a symbolic sleeping, which ends a flashing in the dark. This flashing is a kind of awakening, as hinted by the first line of the fourth stanza. In this awakening, the child, meaning the speaker, initiates, means enters into the world of maturity. Sleeping in the poem is symbolic, that refers to the loss of innocence, that equates the Adam and Eve who had slept after a fall from the grace of God. This initiation of the world of maturity entails the loss of Edenic bliss, innocence, grace, and freedom. Moreover, the poet loses creative imagination and fantasies in which a union with nature was possible. In the last stanza, the poet once again contemplates on the memories of his childhood, but this time the awareness becomes dominant. In the last line, the poet refers to his changed situation in the world of experience. Now he is in chain, green color is withered now. So, this poem is the journey from childhood to manhood. When the manhood comes, the man suffers from agony. Now I am not what I was in the past. The use of verb song hints that the losses can be captured through art in the last line of the stanza. Now let us look at the line-wise summary of the poem. Line 1. Fern Hill is considered one of the most beautiful and evocative recollections of childhood in all of English literature. Thomas opens the poem like a storyteller. The word now does not mean at the as it did then. It is a storyteller's phrase, now as I was young, advises the listener to sit back and hear a story about childhood. The word easy here recalls the comfort and freedom from care that adults associate with childhood. Line 2. Throughout the poem, Thomas combines words that are not ordinarily associated with each other to give the reader a new perspective. Thus, the lilting house becomes one that is full of joy and song. This blend does not give a physical description of the house, but an emotional one. The reader experiences the child's pleasure. This is a key technique in Fern Hill, as Thomas recreates for the reader the idealized dreams of childhood summers. In addition, he combines cliches to create a surprising new way to present an idea of feeling. Each a cliche means something that has been repeated so often that it almost becomes meaningless. Something that is said or done rather. Each cliche would alone attract no attention, but the unusual blend with its wordplay becomes an intriguing and playful simile. Happy as the grass is green does not necessarily translate into a specific identifiable amount of joy. It simply brings the delight of the tongue twisters and nonsense rhymes of childhood. Green, the color of spring and renewal, is used throughout the poem. Line 3. Even the nights are filled with stars, as fits the memories of idyllic childhood. आपको याद होगा बचपन में नानी के घर जाना या किसी दादी के घर जाना, वहाँ पर रातें बिताना, रात को छत पर सोना गर्मियों के दिनों में, तारों को देखना, वो सारी बातें पोइट को भी याद आ रही हैं. Lines 4 to 5. Thomas uses personification when he introduces time, who grants the child permission to enjoy his days fully, to climb golden under his gaze. The use of golden adds the connotation, means the meaning of being charmed, untouched by the ordinary worries of life. Line 6. With this line, Thomas recreates childhood play and fantasies. The child becomes the master of all that is around him. The idea of a fairy tale connotation is further reinforced with the word prince. A child's kingdom is fashioned, means made out, from the world around him. In this case, the apple orchard. Orchard यानी कि फलों का बाग. The line also refers to the apple boughs in the first line and the windfall light in line 9. Such connections help Thomas establish a visual and sensual impression of Fern Hill. Lines 7 to 9. Thomas returns to the mode of storyteller as he changes the traditional opening of fairy tales from upon to below. In addition, it reinforces the impression of time as a gentle overseer in lines 4 to 5. As lord of all this place, the child rules the trees and flowers. In the last line of the stanza, Thomas uses beautiful images, describing the sunlight in the orchard as rivers of windfall light. Windfall refers to the apples fallen from the trees, but in addition, the word has a secondary meaning of good fortune or good luck. Both definitions contribute to the emotional sense of the image. Lines 10 to 11. These lines restate the child's impressions in the first stanza. A sense of well-being is emphasized again as green is repeated and now joined with carefree. The word famous supports the child's sense of being the center of his world. It complements honored, prince, and lordly. Line 12. This line hints at the nostalgia that will end the poem. Although the child feels that he will be young forever, while even the sun must age, it is he who is only once young. Lines 13-14. Again, Thomas parallels the lines 4 and 5 from the previous stanza. Time allows the speaker the freedom to play endlessly. Lines 15 to 16. The emphasis on the colors green and golden with their connotation means meaning of young and blessed recurs throughout the poem. The alliteration in huntsman and herdsman means the repetition of the sound, reinforces the child's idea in the control that he has over the world. The other images in these lines support this feeling. Notice the repetition of words beginning with G, H, and C. Lines 17-18. In this line, Thomas recalls the ways in which children view time as moving slowly. Time, a benevolent force in the child's life, moves at a different pace for him than for adults. Lines 19 to 22. Thomas presents the reader with a series of images: long sunny days, rich and golden hay fields. Hay means जहाँ खेत खलियान जिसमें धान पक चुका है और वो येलो कलर का हो चुका है. sweet melodic air which convey a sense of joy, song, comfort, and contentment. Everything is exaggerated, यानी कि बड़ा चढ़ाकर कहा गया है, as a child might see it. The hay fields seem enormously high. The fire can glow green. Line 23. The rest of the stanza describes the child's ideas about what happens during the night time on the farm. As day turns to night, the stars themselves become not distant spheres but simple objects lighting the sky for a child. Lines 24 to 27. Thomas creates a dream image in which the child imagines that the farm vanishes when everyone is asleep. This foreshadows the disappearance of the farm in the final stanza. However, here the nighttime fantasy is one of adventure, not at all frightening or sad. Thomas even uses blessed to describe these night happenings. The farm is borne away by the owls, seemingly under the protection of the moon. Lines 28 to 30. The morning finds the farm back shimmering with morning dew. The alliterative wanderer white means the repetition here of the sound W continues Thomas's use of connotation. He uses the color white to symbolize purity and renewal. The entire stanza focuses on images of marvel and wonder and renewal. Thomas compares each morning to the first morning of Adam and Eve. The farm becomes Eden before the fall. Fall means when before Adam and Eve were thrown out of the Garden of Eden because they had disobeyed God by eating the fruit from the forbidden tree. Lines 31 to 36. Thomas expands his image by going even further back in time than Adam. He describes the creation of the cosmos itself. Cosmos means the पूरे ब्रह्मांड, पूरी सृष्टि के निर्माण की बात हो रही है. The joy of light appearing finally out of darkness is the joy that surrounds the farm and all the creatures on it as they enter each new day. If these images were expressed through an adult voice, they would seem artificial, even ridiculous. Only through the voice of a child can they express wonder effectively. Lines 37-38. This stanza restates many of the ideas and descriptions in the previous stanzas. Honored was first used in line 6. The animals and house are described again. The new made clouds recall the birth of light in the last stanza, while happy as the heart was long revises the end of line 2. This repetition or echoing effect reinforces the child's life. Days are similar one to another. This is the pattern of childhood. Line 39. The sun born over and over contrasts with the sun in line 12, which is only young once. Lines 40-41. The child's carefree attitude is again described. The alliteration and assonance of house, high, hay reinforce this easy feeling. Lines 42 to 45. With the last three words in line 42, Thomas introduces the idea of loss. Time allows the child such mornings, but they will not last forever. Until this point, the details presented the idealized memories of childhood, recalling what it felt like to be free and easy, to feel that time was generous, giving endlessly sunny days. Now the adult perspective enters. Perspective means the view, the understanding, the angle of something, uh, mourning that the number of those glorious days is so limited. Glorious, happy, sunny days, which those days, the days of childhood. In line 43, Thomas uses alliteration to create an image of the joyful song of time. However, the song is not for adults. Only the green and golden children can hear it. Line 46. This line restates line 42, and the word white again appears with its connotation of innocence, remembering the child's inability to understand the nature of time. Remember, time takes away also. When you were in first year, you did the poem Thoughts in a Garden. In that, if you remember, the poet had talked about time like a reaper which cuts away youth and beauty. Lines 47 to 50. These lines parallel the disappearance of the farm in lines 23 to 27 as the farm disappears in the night time once again. Instead of the protective owls, however, it is time that takes the farm. Line 51. This line provides a poignant contrast to the beginning of stanza 4, when the child wakes up like Adam, overwhelmed by the glory of the world. Thomas effectively uses the alliterative phrase farm forever fled to stress the loss, where the sound F is repeated. Time will no longer show his mercy in a childless land. This final transition means movement from childhood to adulthood, from the remembered glories of childhood to the reality of the adult world is irrevocable, means he cannot go back, it cannot be changed. Lines 52 to 53. Thomas uses repetition of phrases from past stanzas to emphasize the sense of loss. Line 52 repeats line 1 and 14, while line 52 changes line 10 to green and dying. Green now becomes the color of decay. Line 54. The emotional impact of this line is more easily felt than translated. The adult has become a prisoner of time. His life has boundaries like the sea. Time orders his movements just as the moon directs the motion of the sea. So this was the textual understanding of the poem. We will look at the analysis of the poem Fern Hill in the next session. Thank you.